welcome Mr. John Kropf. He's a research engineer with Advanced Maglev Systems. John, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It's something that every electrical engineer dreams about, having this kind of a magnetic levitation system. So it's really an important thing to me.
Tell us a little bit about your system, the maglev system.
Well, the maglev system, the inventor of the vehicle in the system is Doug Malewicki, and he did this about 10 years ago as a single pod for one passenger person, and then it grew to 2 because people didn't want to be by themselves, and then eventually to currently 4 to 5. We hope that the vehicle will handle. But as an aerospace engineer, you want it as light as possible, because every pound of extra weight you add to a system is going to make more expense and heavier equipment, and it's going to fail. So the Lawrence Laboratory in Livermore had a system for magnetic levitation using permanent magnets, and that's kind of what we thought, gee, that's an engineer's dream. And so we put that together, and we've now advanced far beyond that. And so that's kind of in a nutshell. And in the process, we've introduced generating our own electricity through solar when it's available and wind when it's available, or creating hydrogen from hydrolyzers and making it possible that we can have our own microgrid, you might say, electricity system, with that to have transportation during bad times when there's emergencies, and for old folks like me that have a home that wish that they could get to some other places real quick. So that's kind of a nutshell of where we were. And then 4 years ago, we have a contract with the University of Montana, and have been in contact with the professor there in research on energy. And so we worked on that for a number of years, and we finally made a connection on that. So we had a contract the last 4 years, and we've made the major advances under that contract. What we're going to see next is a small, short video of the full-size vehicle for 1 to 5 passengers, and it's at NASA Ames at Moffett Field in California, which is in San Jose, and that's a high-tech campus, and for NASA engineers and people that need access to high technology, people like at NASA. They have a huge wind tunnel, and there's endless information. So it's like a high-tech incubator system. You know, I'm an old farm boy. We hatched eggs in an incubator. And so this is what modern technologies look at as incubators for advancing different areas. And this is high-tech, so it's a very nice place to be. And so this is our laboratory down there I'm about to show you. And show the vehicle in operation. It's our showroom, so to speak, by invitation. So this is the different version of it. We have a control, 2 men in the control booth there for controlling. So this is levitating, not touching anything except the vehicle itself is moving. There's no moving parts in the system. So it's pretty advanced technology, and we're really excited about it. Well, now there's a nice slide that we took many years ago for Westlake Center in Seattle, and I asked the question, how many vehicles can you see? I'll tell you that I see maybe 2 cars, maybe 3 cars, and but there's about 7 more. So we have a guideway. That's a non-stop guideway, and should be a little arrow pointing there to that level. And then we have parked vehicles waiting for another 5. The question is, later on you'll see maybe, but it gives you an idea that is very non-intrusive, and there's a place to board and a place to exit, and these vehicles are always there waiting for you. Okay, we would like to talk about Skytran at NASA, and what it can do and what excites you about some of the things we're going to talk about today. First, magnetic levitation, and next we have no moving parts as the vehicle, except the vehicle, and then it can produce its own electricity, which is a good thing to think about, and that it's about 1/10 of the cost of light rail, and up to 1,000% more capacity, and up to 5,000% a reduction of commute time, and this is really fantastic. And then we hope that you can show that we can upgrade the grid with alternate forms of energy. The first question is, how does the levitation work? Well, here is a professor at Williamson, University of Montana, and a student putting the bogie in now. Some people don't know what a bogie. A bogie is what makes holds the train up. If you're looking at trains, so it's train technology. It'd be the wheels in the case of most trains. There's a few maglev ones, but not like this one. So one of the things I want to point out is there's a box at the top of that little guideway. The guideway is very narrow and tall, and so then that's where the utilities can go in. And now the next up there in the left-hand corner is the levitation magnets on the bogie. So it's a close-up view of what you see in this first picture, but at the upper corner. So now the guideway magnets will be between the upper and lower magnets, and they act as clamping forces. And then the next slide will show the actual end view of the guideway with what you see on the left, and it's kind of lined up with the magnets of the bogie. And then at the bottom of it, you see is the bottom part of the bogie. And then just up from that, there's little dark lines, there's the magnets that are in the guideway. And so when it's fully loaded, that will be look balanced. About the black above the guideway's magnets and the black below will be more or less equal. And so that acts as a clamping feature to make it fly. So that's how the levitation works. And only the bogie moves, the guideway just stands still. Now this is the graduation exercise in 2008 in November, where the DOT representative was there to find out how, if we could do what we said we could do. And the goal was to run this magnetic levitation system on a hydrogen fuel cell with, and that's what you see in the lower left, the fuel cell. And that's in the other picture that you've barely seen behind me, where it is by the bogie. But the fuel cell itself is in the center left and the bottom now, and it has 4 little fuel cell converters, runs on hydrogen, and makes up 250 watts each. So that's 1 kilowatt of energy that's produced by the hydrogen, and that's more than enough to drive our bogie that I'm standing next to. And then on the right, we have the hydrolyzer, which converts electricity from solar, wind, etc., most any form, to hydrogen. So and one more thing that's interesting about this hydrolyzer technology, that there's a university that's been able to do energy from plastic. So it's someday in the future. Now the outside of this laboratory in Montana are the solar panels and the windmill. And you can see the solar panel 2 kilowatt right above where I'm standing, and the windmill up in the corner. And then on the left is a picture of the second solar, more modern solar, on an actual piece of guideway, so you can see the perspective. But the idea was to have the sun on one side and the shade of the sun on the other side, and have 2 controllers to find out just how much electricity is generated by these modern technology solar panels, and because they're much smaller and more efficient. So that's looking at that. Now the slide that's going to come up now is looking at biomass. Now, the World War II, you can see up at the top, that is really a big trailer and a picture on it showing the biomass gasifier and the motor generator, and then below is opening those panels up and putting in wood chips on the right end, which is the biomass. It could be most anything that's grown, which the picture shows on the top. and then it's dried and converted and makes a very good gas that's almost perfect. And it feeds a motor generator on the left side, on the other side of this vehicle demonstration. So it gives 25 kilowatts of energy. Now, a father and son team, I've calculated, could produce a megawatt of energy by going into the forest and taking all the underbrush and all the stuff that feeds forest fires and bringing it in and running it through the chipper and onto this machine. This is invented by the Germans in World War II. And this is where the modern technology of this has millions of gallons of plastic that's wasted and is a problem for us, and they're generating a way of salvaging it and making a good fuel out of it that's non-polluting. So that shows the new technology that can be going on with biomass.
If you could explain a little bit about what is a line haul system.
Okay, that gets a question that comes up quite a bit. A line haul system is a good train is a good example of it. And we will see that if a typical train goes from point A to point B and makes stops in between, and only 2 or 3% of the people in transit take the train or the buses. And the bus system is really the same idea. You're home and you want to go to work, and how do you get to the train? Well, in our part of the country, sometimes we say the train is that goes nowhere and starts at nowhere, because nobody lives really close to the train. And so the definition of a line haul system is just that it starts from point A, goes to point B, and it has government regulations on saying how much G-force they can have or whatever, how many people can be standing. They have a lot of regulations on it, but it has definite limits on its capabilities, and we've oversold it throughout the world as far as I'm concerned. So that is basically what a line haul system is. I can give examples. What you see on the screen now is on the lower left is a train. It's a sounder train from Tacoma to Seattle, and it goes beyond. And one of the Emory Bundy many years ago calculated that it costs, the taxpayers pay $300 for every passenger that goes on that train. And it only goes twice a day, or maybe 3 or 4 times a day. But so it doesn't create any kind of a dent at a huge cost to the taxpayer. And the one on the top is a light rail system, which is really not much more than a train, but it generally has electrical driven, so they claim that. But they always say what the capacity is, and that's how, and the capacity. But when you look at it, it's a couple times a day. It's pretty well loaded, but there's not a place in the world that it really makes any money, and they all lose money. All these systems lose money. And on the right, you have bus system stacked up at a terminal. We've got some people that are waiting to go. They're rushing from one bus to another, trying to make connection, because they lose it. It may be another 20, 30 minutes before they get going again. And then, of course, you got our automobile that we all love, and at the different parking lots. And so we have congestion there on the freeways that we saw earlier that it caused. So there you have a bunch of line haul systems with a system that's non-line haul. And the car, actually, most of the people get to work with the car. Very few use the bicycle. We'd love it if they could use more. And if we get that 2.3 or 3% up to a higher level, people wanting to go on a transit system, because right now it's quicker, cheaper to take a car. So now this one is the question that comes up is, what's Cliff's law? Well, I want to take the time to explain it. This is a grid with 41 nodes, and say you have take up the upper right-hand corner, you make a triangle there. But if you used our vehicle, you could travel any one of those ways from home to work or vice versa. It doesn't have to take any one pattern. Now, the example of what Radcliffe's law is, though, since we're talking about it here, is the facts. So let's look at just one little leg up there that has two nodes that have a straight line between them. Fax has been around a long time, but the fax is a one-way transmit and one-way receive. So you transmit your fax, and then you receive back from that fax that you've got it received you, and so you're tying up both directions of the line, and you only go one direction at a time. So the typical fax, that's what Metcalfe's law starts out with, and so it says the number of nodes times the number of nodes minus 1 divided by 2 is the capacity. And so if you now make a triangular node of faxes, you would see that you would have 3 times 2 divided by 2, or 3. So you got to get up to the higher numbers to have any value to it. But if you did 41 nodes like this, I think I counted them right, I counted them twice, got 41 nodes out of this picture. But if you take 41 times 40, which is the number of nodes minus 1, and divide by 2, you can see that 41 nodes would give you 820 times the capability of the fax. So that means that if one fax has got the time tied up, you can make another way to get there. So that's kind of we're working toward the physical network architecture. Now we have the way that works with a fax is that the fax finds out that the node is there, it has a crash. And so it can't go that way, so it has to wait or tries another way to go. So in an electronic network, like the internet we're used to, works on the basis that, is it busy? Crash into it and find out. And if it's busy, you make another way or wait. And so Metcalfe's law is pretty useful in that sense. But now, if we're going to relate it to a physical network where we're going to have vehicles doing a network, which is what our goal is trying to do, now you can't have collisions with a vehicle. You don't want to kill somebody. So when you reach a node with a vehicle, you have to be protected and not go through that node if it's busy. So you have to know that it's busy ahead of time. So that's basically the difference, is that we'll have more lines perhaps, because it has to have a two-way passage to be reset. Well, when we do that, we can change Metcalfe's law from the dividing by 2 to no longer dividing by 2, and so the number of nodes goes higher. And I think it goes to 1,600, whatever. The other one is doubled because it's that 41 node network should have, if it was a physical network with no collisions, then it would actually have double the capacity of the fax networks set up, or the equivalent of electronic. So the physical network is a new term, and we think that is a very good term. So on this picture you see, we're going to give an example of 3 airports, and then we're going to put nodes between them. There's Renton and Boeing Field, and SeaTac in Seattle. So there's an equilateral triangle if you didn't have to worry about roads to take, but we'd naturally take whatever the physical sites would be, and we'd have it two-way for these ones. So what happened here, if you have a power failure or a tree fall across one node, you would say, okay, the one between Renton and Boeing Field was broken. Well, you still get there by going from SeaTac to Renton or SeaTac to Boeing. So if you wanted to go to Renton from Boeing, you go down to SeaTac and then over to Boeing or Renton. So you have the ability to change, and you have a physical network capability that is not handicapped by a one-way, wait till I get there, and then now you can go the other way. So now the added thing to this is that the airport capacity itself can be up to 6 times, like is shown there by using Metcalfe's law. 3 nodes times 2 is 6. So you can have up to 6 times the capacity because it's a two-way street on every one. And the same thing is true with the airport. If we call it a virtual airport, well, the virtual airport, what if you can't land? There's a fire or something at Renton. And so that airplane could be diverted to either Boeing or SeaTac, and the passenger that's riding, if he's got the ability to use our hyper modules to travel in, he doesn't care. It's going to be 5 or 10 minutes at the most, and I've walked on this trip, half hour perhaps walking between gates at the airport. So this is like, it makes it any gate that you were there. So there's many advantages that can be had there because of that. And I listed 10 of them, and I don't think it's worth the time to do that, but you can think about it. Security, speed, reliability, weather. There's just a whole ton of things that say, wow, this is really important that we can do this. So that's the idea behind the physical network. Okay, now what we're looking at is the light rail from Seattle, SeaTac to Seattle. It's 16 miles. It has 13 stops. Has a dwell time at each station of 35 seconds. And the interval between trains is 15 minutes. And the max speed is 50 miles an hour. And the G level, that's the G forces that your body, when you start stopping or starting, is allowed to take place. And there's limits on that on standing vehicles. So anyway, that comes out with an average speed of 30.63 miles per hour in a trip time of 38.84 minutes. So it's roughly 40 minutes. And the mile per hour, including an average wait time, is only 24.72, so it's half the speed basically. So now what we're going to do is go to a hyper. We want to see the minimum and the maximum out of this. So that's why I'm showing this as an example. I should stop up and say the number of stops is 2 because we have a beginning and ending. We start and we stop, so we have 2 basically stations to worry about. Now the dwell time is 0 because we don't have any stop. When you get the vehicle, you get on and you go. So there's no waiting for the vehicle. And then the interval is 0 because you're always available. So there's no interval waiting when you come there. And the maximum speed, that could be 120 miles an hour. We probably wouldn't start that way. We'd start at 60 probably. But so this shows that the G forces, because you're strapped in, you can handle multiple Gs, but we put the same as you have when an airplane takes off. Is a half a G is roughly what you feel when you get back in your seat. So that should give us then almost 120 miles an hour, 117. So that's an example of getting it. So the trip time is like 8 minutes instead. And so you have 466% improvement in the time it takes to get there, and 900% more passengers capability at this example. So at any rate, we can do this with this program. Is available if you have Excel. And you can do it for any system for your city or for whatever you want to do. And you can compare the bus speeds. We could go up to 11 miles is a typical one that I have in the process, and put in the number of bus stops, what the dwell time in the bus stop is, and how long the acceleration is going to be, the interval. All those things will give you a new feeling for what the exact speed is going to be, or the time is going to be, and it'll be a very, very good approximation to the truth. If the truth doesn't exist, it's because we put the wrong numbers in. So anyway, that's a demonstration of the average speed calculator, and in the bullet train in California is proposing, so Doug Malowicki's graph in different speeds, and when they make the stops, it takes so long to accelerate and decelerate and stop, and then it takes, so the interval is so long. Their average speed is closer to 90 miles an hour instead of 250 miles an hour, I believe is the right number, but I don't have it right in front of me. But it gives you an idea. You can go to any system, plug in the data, and it'll give you some good answers.
So here's a question. How long would it take to build?
Well, Jim, the inventor put the figures together many years ago and how long it would take to build. And he said that we could build a mile a day with a 3-shift crew. The question is, well, you have to build, that's to install. Now, to build the components means that we have to get mass production in scale for little factories, and we'd like to produce these factories locally to produce the vehicles. And we could build factories that produce 10 miles a year up to 100 miles a year. So we're talking about far exceeding the 16 miles that they've spent 4 or 5 years building in Seattle to the airport. So that it gives you an idea of the economy of scale that we should be able to improve. Now, the chart you see up there is, we looked at the average speed calculator, and so this shows the results for the column I'd like you to look at is the trip minute, how long it takes to go, and the time per passengers per hour. Okay, the time in there, the percentage of the improvement. Now, if we start and look at the blue ones, we can see that that's a good example that for we could have calculated that a 15-minute interval on the light rail from SeaTac to downtown takes 38.84 minutes. And if you look down at the bottom and look at the hyper thing, we see that we can do that trip in 8.18 minutes, basically so much faster, and that would add up to 466% faster, and 5,373 more passengers than that in that one. Or I guess, no, take that back, it's 486 and 900. But at any rate, you can marry the idea of one at a time, looking at all those, and come up with how much better off the hyper system is. Now this is just in the line haul mode. This has nothing to do with the network. This is just treating the hyperspeed system as a line haul system replacement. So you can see that it costs much less and it does much more.
What is the environmental impact?
Well, this is a good example of it in the pictures of showing the light rail. You can see the size of it when it's up there on its own pedestals. And then we have intermediate, and of course in Seattle we had the ETC monorail project that failed. And then the intermediate monorail. And finally we have the SkyTran, which is really a monorail too. And it's a hanging type, lightweight. And you can see the environmental impact is pretty low. This is on Aurora Avenue, which is the old 99 highway that went from Vancouver, British Columbia down to San Diego, and before the freeways. So it's got relatively low powered with transformers in the neighborhoods along their line. And the dream of everybody is to say, can't we bury that underground? Well, the price to bury it underground is about the same as it costs to build our system. So in that little box that we had in the system, I had you, and one of the first slides that we looked at showed a cavity that we could put power lines in, or utility lines and various things. So we think that'll fit. So now this is the slide that we started out looking at, and now you can see in red where those 7 vehicles are that you couldn't see before. And the question I asked was, how many vehicles are there? Well, there were 3 cars and 7 vehicles. So 2 of them are going at maybe 100 miles an hour going down the guideway, and then the ones below, there are 5 of them that are waiting for a passenger, because on one end the vehicle comes in, on the other end a passenger leaves, or 2 or 3 or 4. So that gives you an idea of the pollution that we think is pleasing in this case.
So why not use 8-passenger vehicles?
It's 8-passenger to 10-passenger, but it's at a university, and the kids can overload like they used to do in a Volkswagen, and they got 20 kids into one of these vehicles. So anyway, this shows the interior and you give an idea of the size and the weight of this thing. But it's automatic. You have automatic switching. It goes, and if nobody else wants to go you bypass the station if there's nobody that gets off. But they have to get off. Then they're going to have the same problems with the line haul. It's not really a line haul because it has the ability to go point to point without any intervention. So it's the kind of the grandfather. Well, we can't afford to have that much stuff just to haul a couple people, and because the average freeway carries 1.3 to 1.1 to 1.4, depending on part of the world you are, passengers per freeway vehicle. So if you want to get all the advantages of a personal rapid transit, you'd want to keep the number of passengers low and the weight of the vehicle low, and you want to make it so that it's economical. And in this case, after a few years, 2 to 5 years, actually profitable, where the city would make money on a system. Like Seattle spends $1 billion a year on their bus system, 330 miles roughly and that's $1 billion a year, and we could replace that in 2 to 3 years with the profit making. So the city, instead of being out $1 billion a year, would make a profit.
The maglev system is established already in Europe. And tell me the difference between your system and the system in Europe.
Okay, well, the system in Europe is very, very large. It's tens of tons of equipment, and it has to be a lot of levitation. In order to levitate that kind of equipment as a regular train, it requires supercooled electricity, so it has like no resistance. It's so cooled down to near 0 Kelvin, which is, everything stops down there. So that's something they have to have a refrigeration system that keeps those all the systems on the magnet that do the maglev stuff. So if there's a power failure, you have tons and tons of stuff that's going at a very high rate, and there's no place for it to go. It's going to crash down on those steel rails. And so you have no safety feature. I'm sure they have steel for it to run against steel, but if you're having a power failure, that's something you have to have lots of steady power. And so that's a big difference. They do not use the neodymium magnets that we have, that are permanent magnets that are very powerful. But because we started out with the Lawrence Lab ideas, and then we graduated to using the magnets directly, which causes an instability, which we have solved and have a problem can do that. But the big thing is, it is several orders of magnitude more complex to have a system of many components that lead to failure. And so, it's there's been a serious accident because somebody left a crowbar on the railroad, on the railroads. And so things like that can happen, and it can happen on anything. But the inventor, Doug Mailwicki, said that we wanted a guideway that if it's impossible for the bogie any vehicle to get away from the guideway. So we have to destroy the guideway to have to destroy the vehicle. And so, and if power fails on our system, we're still levitating, we just glide to the nearest exit. So it's like in the freeway, if you lost power in your car and you could coast at least between exit points, then you could get off safely and out of the harm's way if your car failed all of a sudden. So there's kind of a rough idea of what the difference between maglev systems are. And by the way, China has 5 different maglev systems, and some of them use permanent magnets. So there's a competition factor there. I think they've read our patents.
For your project, what are the key technologies that will bring you success?
Well, Jim, the key technologies I think that we're involved with are in materials, in machining, in the capability of computers, and that's another reason for being in NASA is that they have, you know, they put people on the moon, they send things to Mars, and their computer technology they've created is great, and so the computer technology is a big thing. Machining, we've used laser cutting, we've used water jet, and that's promising. Cutting to create coils that what we call them levitation coils and centering coils, and so that's always looking for the technology of how you do this or how you do that. But we get involved with epoxies in the plastic world, so we're interested in that. We want lightweight system and strong system. So the new technology that Boeing has got for their 787 is the kind of technology that we need for making lightweight guideways that are really strong and don't sag. So all those things are, we're just always looking at the new technologies that may be involved with what we want to do.
Taking the time to join our event at Global Spec and for your time and expertise in answering these questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jim, for inviting me to do this, because it's almost like a dream come true to be able to let so many people know. And Global Spec has been such an inspiration to me in being able to gather information and feed it out to my partners. And it's so multifaceted in your approach. And so I'm just so happy to do this, because I think that there's so many industries that'll benefit from what we're doing, even if you're not involved with building or doing it, but all the different forms of energy that we're able to use, and the micro capacity of the net, and the emergency capacity for old folks like me. It just gives freedom a new feeling to me, and so I'm just very thankful for the opportunity to do this, and thank you very much.